So, today we'll spend some time talking about emotional labor. Now, I'm just going to say it. I'm no expert. I'm going to tell you, I'm going through it right now too. I'm really thinking hard about what's the emotional labor that I'm putting into projects and teams and things that I'm working on. And what are the choices that I get to make about where to invest my emotional labor and where to pull back? So, I made a few notes that I'll refer to from time to time, but let's maybe start with why does it happen? Why why do we even need this idea of emotional labor? Like where did this come from? Well, first of all, if it's not obvious, hello human, this is how we need to connect as humans. This is the true work of being a society where we live and love and are connected and do good things and do good work and be able to live our lives and be part of a world. But what we often forget, or it gets pushed to the bottom of the list in our workplaces, is that being human, having emotions is work. And this emotional labor often becomes invisible. Some some of you may have heard me use the old term make the invisible visible. And emotional labor, making that emotional labor visible is part of the things that when we are working and we are working hard and we are trying so hard to move things forward and maybe we're tired and maybe it's not quite clicking, we have to recognize, even for ourselves, that we have to make the invisible visible, the invisible part of the emotional labor visible. So, we'll talk about what gets in the way in a minute, but I think even just recognizing that part of what you might be experiencing when work gets stressful or you're feeling just exhausted and then looking at your calendar and say, but what did I do today? A lot of that might be the emotional labor you're putting into that. So it happens because we're human. It happens just because we're wired to care about relationships. I had a client recently on our initial call say, well, I'm a numbers person. I'm really not a people person. But what was interesting in that every conversation about the leader that she wanted to be and who she aspired to be was full of being an inspirational, visionary leader who listens to people, who connects people, who trusts people, and then gives them clear direction and lets them do their job and get out of the way. That's not a person who doesn't like people. It's not even a person who's not good with people. So, caring about relationships is part of all of our DNA. We might talk ourselves out of saying, I don't care. But the truth is, this is how we're wired, right? Biologically, our brains are wired for connection. And that really harkens back to that old lizard brain that we've talked about. The lizard brain wants to stay safe. The lizard brain wants to protect you. And knowing that you are accepted in the tribe is protection. So we care whether we can do the work to release caring in some situations or not. This is just part of who we are. So recognizing that that's just a natural part of how we work, that we need to be able to create space for it and recognize it and call it by name. Another reason why I think the emotional labor happens and continues to build in a lot of our lives at work, no matter what you do and what your role is that nothing is straightforward. Everything is interconnected, everything is an onion to peel back. So we need to understand really what others are doing and how they do it often to be able to get things done. Now, that doesn't mean micromanaging. It doesn't mean tell me every step and I want to check in with you every step of the way. there's a lot of that that means understanding enough as to where I can offer more trust, or you can trust me of how we want to do this together. But it's just not possible anymore, I think, in our complex projects that we work on, in our complex world, to stay just in our silo, right? Or in our ship. Even if you're critical of your organization because you're like, we just all work in our silos. The truth is, even in your silo, there's some emotional labor. There's some trying to understand who does what they care about, how it interacts with the things that I'm responsible for or the things that I want to do. So our workplace currently, and this goes for work that is, what we call knowledge work, as well as physical work. I mean, our anybody who interacts with other people needs to understand the weight of emotional labor, what it takes to be able to interact with people. And those in customer service roles, those in frontline employee roles, that's actually where some of it originated. Has anybody ever uh, had to smile and nod when someone was rude to them or mean to them? That's emotional labor. It's emotional labor to choose your response. And if you've been here with me before, you know one of the things that I'm constantly teaching is that we only control three things. We control what we say, what we do, and what we think. And the thinking part takes building that muscle. It takes time, right? Our safety brains, those lizard brains, are designed to jump to the conclusion. So when we recognize that there is emotional labor that is layered into our work, we cut ourselves some slack. We give ourselves a break, and we recognize what it actually is going to take. Not just the tasks, not just the time it takes to do the things, but the time it takes to feel, to process, to connect with others, and to be able to do the labor that actually is the glue for so much of the work that we do. So, if we know emotional labor is important, and if you've ever had a leader or a manager or a team member who said, I see you, I appreciate the difficult spot you're in, I'm so grateful to be working on this team with you, you know that that means a lot. And for them to take that action, it weighs a lot. And as little things can count toward lifting some of the emotional labor. But why then, if we know we all want to acknowledge each other, we want to support each other, we want to do our jobs and enable others to do what they need to do, what gets in the way? What gets in the way? Well, there's a couple of things that I've noticed and that I'm noticing in the situation I'm going through right now. Is one is that emotional labor takes time. One of the best pieces of advices that my friend John gave me when I first became a baby people manager, he said, Darce, people take time. You can't put it on a schedule often. You can't rush it. There are things that you have to create the space for, that create the white space for. And sometimes, and I think increasingly in what I'm seeing happening inside a lot of my clients' companies, is that the space that we have to take is the space for us. I believe that right now, self awareness is the new leadership superpower. If we haven't taken the time to be aware of how we think, how we feel, even to be cognizant of what we're actually saying in our unguarded moments, in our unprepared moments. If we haven't done that self reflection, that self analysis, then it's often likely that we might not put in the emotional labor, or we might think we are, but it's not getting us the result that we want. Self awareness is the new leadership superpower. It's one of the reasons I'm such a fan of coaching, not just doing it, but also receiving it. Every good coach should have a coach. Being able to have someone else peek in, to listen, to be in a safe place, to be in a trusting relationship where there's no right or wrong. It's just understanding how we're wired, how we think, and what choices actively we want to make about it. So, time gets in the way because we don't often take the time, not only with other people, but often just with ourselves, to recognize that we have a lot of emotional labor going on. And we need to recognize that emotional labor is work. And it's not the extra stuff that's left over at the end of the day. It actually, in many roles, especially as you continue to build your leadership career, it's most of your day.